Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
Today we're revisiting The Penguin, the spin-off series starring Colin Farrell set in the world of Matt Reeves' The Batman. And my guest is Hair Department Head Brian Badie. Brian, welcome to Below the Line.
Thank you, Skip. Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you. Also joining me as co-host today is Gianni Damaia, host of the Bad Movies podcast and friend of the show. Gianni, nice to see you again.
Always good to be back, Skid. Thanks for having me.
Now, back around Halloween, we spoke with Helen Huang and Austin Whittick about the costumes on this show. And if you missed that episode, I'd encourage you to go check it out. Now, all 8 episodes of The Penguin are available on Max. And a warning to listeners, today's conversation will contain spoilers. Now, Brian, tell us how you got involved with this production.
I got involved through 2 producers, Bill Carrera and Dana Robin, who I had previously worked with on Lovecraft Country. So they gave me the call and brought me aboard.
From the movie with the Colin Farrell character, the Penguin, what contact did you have, or how did you take that to help carry it into the show?
I had no conversations with the hair team from the Batman film. I do know Mike Marino from way back, like I'm Legend days. So I got my own inspiration just from the movie itself, and I did my own research beforehand. And then going into the project, I'm collaborating with Dylan Clark, who is with Matt Reeves, and then the showrunner Lauren LaFranc, as well as Craig Zobel. But prior to, yes, I had no meetings or conversations about the look from the Batman versus the Penguin.
Now, when we talked about the Penguin's costumes, it was obvious that you take a couple of scenes from the movie, now you're expanding it, and he's the main character throughout. Is there similar effort with his hair to figure out how it's going to look different over the course of the 8 episodes, flashbacks and such? Or for the Penguin characters, the hair pretty much set?
Yes, the Penguin himself is set, and like that character was already established. So it's kind of like, let's just keep up the continuity, and the only changes will be like during the action and things like that, like the explosion scene, just dirt and hair, that kind of thing. But his look was already set, designed before he came to the Penguin.
Brian, because I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Batman had filmed in London and then this show had filmed in New York.
Correct.
Was there any sort of difference in the sort of process to fit the new sort of aesthetic style of New York, or did you guys just kind of just follow the exact rubric that was followed before?
Well, in theory, it's supposed to be Gotham, so the locations were just filming locations. So yes, the continuity for us was to stay in the theme of the Gotham City mode and the Batman, being that the overall look of all departments was sort of set in the Batman film. And I feel like all of us kept that in the back of our heads, well, really kind of the front of our heads. I know I did, to stay in the theme of the movie that I'd already, fell in love with that world. I didn't want to be like something completely different.
Well, something that is completely new to the series is the character of Sophia, played by Kristen Milioti. And so this character, her hairstyling has a definite arc going on here. Brian, tell us more about how you put that together.
Well, for Sophia, there's different elements. There is her arc. In particular, I used, as far as my inspiration, of course, starting from the Batman and the overall theme of the film, and then going into the various parts of her arc with her look, like coming from Arkham and the young innocent look up until when she turns like to a complete psycho and wants to kill her whole family. Like all of these things I use in designing her hair. It starts from the cut, but then after the cut, it's in the mood. So her moods, her hair changes with her moods. It's almost like the story I was trying to tell is her hair had a life of its own, and it was sort of like the mood ring of her body was her hair.
I had seen you in I think the interview with, was it motionpictures.org? That was a great interview. And you had said something in there that it was describing her final sort of stage of that hair arc as manic, and I had called it to Skid. I was like, yeah, that manic pixie dream girl, like it kind of gives like Kristen Stewart the Runaways sort of like punk rock aesthetic.
Uh-huh.
But you had said something in that I thought was really interesting, where you also said, and I don't remember this being visually told in the show, but you had said that it was like she was cutting her hair herself. Was that was like a direct sort of choice that you wanted it to look like she was sort of designing it her own?
Yes, it was supposed to come across like in her moment, she is morphing into this big reveal because, as you noticed at the beginning, she's like this demure, like hidden character under this little sort of crazy bang that resembles claws. So, and then towards the end, when she's like, okay, enough already, enough with this shield, let's reveal the real Kristen or, well, the real Sophia. And she sort of is like, starts chopping into her hair in the bathroom. So that was kind of the look I wanted the hair to be. And so not so precise, not so salon styled, a little bit of a perfectly imperfect mess, but still stay on trying to make it a fashion thing for just the fashion people in the world, and trying to mesh all these components into one look. But absolutely, I wanted it to be chopped into, textured, crazy, not smooth, not blow dried looking. It was really kind of interesting to achieve all these components into one hairstyle, actually. I loved it.
And I think jumping back to Skid's previous episode where you were talking to some of the costuming team, there was something that they had said where it was pretty much free reign, where they could pick from a lot of different influences in terms of like 70s aesthetic or 80s aesthetic or what have you. Did you feel the same sort of freedom in the actual hairstyling in the show as well?
Yes, for me, I definitely went to some key moments of like a Joan Jett, Pat Benatar, kind of like
Mm.
badass chick. But I also wanted to bring some future into it, some futuristic notes that we haven't seen before. And that's where like when I styled it to look sort of like fingers, and at certain points when she becomes a little more crazy, her hair like lifts up.
Mm.
So for me, that was my version of trying to incorporate some futuristic elements. But I definitely had freedom across the board. With just me and Kristen collaborated on that. It wasn't so much production. Production just was concerned about wig versus not. And once we got past, we're going to use a wig.
Mhm.
Then after that, it was sort of free reign. And I just kind of cut it and came up with the concept. And we put the wig on Kristen without telling anyone. And she went to set. And just to see the natural reaction of people to present this new look, and they actually thought we cut her hair, so it was a bit of a gag, and
That's awesome.
everybody had to calm down for a minute. I would never forget the first AD's look. She was like in the middle of the street because they were filming at the time. And we came to set, and Kristen said, was, and the first AD was in the middle of the street, just with her jaw just dropped, like, did they cut the hair? And like 5 minutes into it, she's like, it's a wig, and they all were like, oh my god! But they loved it, so it was a
Yeah.
nice organic reaction to this new look because a mullet is a hard sell. It's not a very well liked haircut across the board, so you might get some negative reactions. But Kristen was the perfect person for it, so I felt strongly it would work.
Right. Jumping back, I think a little bit on the idea that you could pull from pretty much anywhere, because I think you were talking in the same interview about Vic's hairstyling being very like modern New York. Could you expand on that sort of concept a little bit?
Yeah, for Vic, for his hair, like I definitely, even though it's Gotham City, he's a Latino, a young Latino guy, so I wanted to pull from what we call an uptown fade. So it's like Washington Heights kind of haircut. Like, yes, I go to a barbershop, but I wanted because he was like so endearing and so gentle, I wanted his hair to represent that. And so I brought in more angles. So it was like he's cool, but he's a little like nerdy for lack of a better his hair isn't like completely in trend, but there's notes of it. Like the fade is there, but it's not overly stylized
Mhm.
because I didn't want it to read like you go to a barber every Thursday or every 3 days, like in real life. And I thought the angular, the upside down sort of triangle I was trying to create sort of made him, I don't want to use the word goofy, but it was a nerdiness to it that helped me make him appear more like endearing and like nerdy in a way.
There's an innate innocence in the sort of style of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you saw him coming through a hallway in school, like you would definitely know he's not like the number one guy on campus, but at the same time, he's still keeping up just a little bit.
Mhm.
But this hairstyle is just a little like uniquely his. So
Yeah.
it was definitely like I worked with some like architectural moments and making more geometry instead of just thinking cool points and things like that. But definitely inspired by like Washington Heights, Dominican kind of uptown fade.
Yeah, I mean, I'm literally zooming in from Hamilton Heights right now, so believe me, I know exactly what you're talking about, what you're
Yeah.
going for.
Oh, also it's and I want to keep a little bit of the trend with the broccoli cut that's happening with the younger generation is what I call it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that too, you know. So I did when he came in, it was long all over. I didn't want it to be Afro retro. I wanted to stay away from that circular shape. And so therefore that's where the angles came in.
Hmm.
I want to ask you a question going back to the Sophia character, because we talked about where she makes the turn and kills her entire family. I don't recall, and I'm going to go on a rewatch, but does the hair telegraph that she's going crazy, or does the event trigger the change in hair? In other words, are you following or leading her character trend?
I would think that's a bit of a lead moment for her overall because that's the yellow dress. That's the big reveal of the entrance. You know, she's upstairs pulling this stunt together. Everybody's innocently at dinner. So Sophia starts morphing alone. And with that is her choice to put on the yellow dress to be a little more sexy. She reveals her scars. This is the wolf cut. So this is the initial cut. And to me, the hair and costumes are a result of what Sophia is feeling at the moment. But for the audience, many people have DM'd me about this look saying, I knew she was up to something the minute I saw that hair and that dress, specifically, her big reveal. So yeah, I think it starts with her.
That's an accomplishment right there in and of itself, right? That you're able to that people are able to identify it, then that I think kind of speaks
Yeah.
to the work.
And it shows that the audience is smart for like looking for the nuances and the details. Like I really, there are a lot of smart people out there who are catching all the backstory of for my department is specifically with the hair. It's really impressive.
There's another character, we were talking about wigs earlier. There's a character that uses, I guess, a lot of wigs, and I think it's sort of intrinsically sort of baked into the character themselves. And I apologize, I don't actually remember the character's name, but it's the sort of helpful prostitute, for lack of a better term, that Oz keeps coming back to.
Yes.
And when it ends, I was really struck because one of the last scenes in the show is, of course, them dancing in this sort of like vintage but also barren sort of apartment, like penthouse. And she is styled it seemingly to be reminiscent of Oz's mother. I mean, I'm sure that's a sort of direct sort of implication in the script, but was there any sort of challenge in getting the hair to sort of replicate that look?
Well, actually, her name is Eve as a character.
Got it. Thank you.
It's Carmen is yoga. That was one of the easier because she's doing cosplay. So and because Carmen's character was already established as a wig wearing person, this is her thing. She does this for her clients. She does this in the underground world. So that made it easy. Now, if we would have never seen her in a wig, it would have been a little bit like, how do we tell the story that all of a sudden she's doing cosplay? So it was kind of within her realm of cosplay with her clients. And you know, Carmen killed it, first of all. I just have to the energy in that first shot of her, I actually thought it was her mother. I thought it was a little bit of a flashback or a dream sequence. I didn't really realize it was Carmen, and I was there. I was like, wait, is that Carmen? Yeah, it was her body language and the way she kind of went into this thing that she did. And I wanted the hair to resemble Oz's mother, but I didn't want it to be exact. I wanted to be kind of thrown together, messy, just sort of like having much more texture and a little less glam to make it look more creepy. So for me, that whole scene was supposed to be a little bit of the glam. Like you said, the room was not pulled together, but I wanted it to be that as well. She wasn't wearing shoes, I recall. And her hair looked a little like disheveled. So to me, it just looked really weird and creepy. And that's what we were kind of going for, not so glamorous.
Just to, because I owe it to nerd fans out there to at least address this, because I just saw this theory the other day that it never even crossed my mind, but people are theorizing that she is actually Clayface. This was not something that was talked about on set, I presume, but I have to at least try to.
It was not discussed. And if it were that world, I wouldn't be privy to this information. You know, there's a
Right,
lot
right.
of layers to this. So
Sure.
I have no idea what's happening in the future.
But I think jumping on that though, because there was something that I wanted to ask in regards to clues maybe production is intentionally leaving behind, and then clues they have to avoid leaving behind to not give the wrong impression. So, for example, when I saw Thea Rossi's character for the first time, my immediate thought was, oh, it's Hugo Strange, right? And so I'm just waiting for him to get like that chin strap sort of beard, or like to have like the final sort of arc or reveal or whatever. Obviously, that never happened, right? And then, of course, other people online are like, oh, it's supposed to be Scarecrow, and he's, they have all these theories. Were there any times where you had a sort of idea or a look or a concept for a character's look that you had to deliberately avoid to not give the wrong impression?
To not play into the comic book expectations, right? Of what
Yeah,
people are looking for stuff like that. And so there's a negative space, Brian, that you're also working with. It's not, not
yeah,
just what you do, but there's expectations.
Well, yes, you're right. There is that the like fusing of the two worlds. I mean, again, we don't really know. I'm not that smart when it comes to like all the backstories mixed with what's happening. Like the fans are way more smarter than I am. The only thing I can say is with Sophia's look, I did have to low key consider Zoe's look
mm,
because I did gather that there potentially could be a moment where those two will come together.
right.
It wasn't confirmed. Nobody said this, but I could gauge that when I was designing her hair, it couldn't be overall, it couldn't be a look that would ultimately compete with Zoe's character. So I needed to stay a little separate. And that was the only thing that I had to consider as far as moving forward or what happened before other characters getting like fused into the story. But I treated every character like what happens if this goes into the world of the Batman. So for me, designing Penguin, I always considered the film as well, like if this character needed to travel into the Batman film.
Well, what other characters, Brian, were some of your favorites or had arcs that maybe we didn't notice, but on again, a second viewing, things might jump out at us if we paid more attention to the hair?
Well, Kristen, of course, number one. I did like Renzi. I mean, I liked them all for what they were. I wish I would have had more time to play with a lot of the BG world because I feel like those were moments that a story could have been told. But that was me and my ego at the moment. But when you see the overall finished product, it wasn't really a moment. And if I would have taken those steps, they wouldn't have been showcased as much because when you're filming things, everybody is equally as important. But when the editing comes into play and all that, you find that, well, we didn't really see like Oz's girls. I really wanted that world to have a whole voice with
Mm,
hair. I wanted to wig everyone. I wanted to give them very unique looks where they're like a theme, like a group of girls, like a gang. But after seeing it filmed and the few times they were on camera, on screen, yes, I would have liked to have still had my moment with them, but they weren't featured enough to where I'm like, oh, missed opportunity. But that's about it. Other than that, as long as the overall look was the Gotham Cityness, which was a little textured, edgy, fashionable, but not pulled together, not over stylized. So all these nuances, to me, as long as that was happening, I was happy.
Question I have just in regards to a lot of comparisons the show is getting, right? So obviously The Sopranos is being marketed as like this major influence on it. And I think that's just because crime show on HBO, right? Like that's really the
Right.
correlation. But there's other things too, I think narratively that kind of speak to the work. But was there anything in regards to that specifically as like a direct inspiration or something that you had to avoid to make sure that the two worlds are entirely separate?
I did not want the word Sopranos to ever be brought up. I was like, this is not the Sopranos. I was like, I don't want to work here on if it's the Sopranos, this is just an Italian like mob movie to me. This is Batman. Like it has to be Batman. So I was a little nervous about that. And if I even hit a reference, it makes me a little tight.
Yeah.
Uh, but my way of getting around that is that's why I added the texture, the little bit of the like undergroundness that people wasn't actually doing their hair in professional settings. Oz was the only one that was more like stylized. But if you looked at all the Falcone world, there was a few guys that were smooth, but for the most of the point, I just wanted it to be a little more textured and edgy. Whereas The Sopranos, to me, with that kind of Italian mob kind of vibe, that hair is in place. Everybody looks really styled. Like it is part of the calling card of the mob look is perfect hair. I tried to stay away from that by making the hair like perfectly imperfect, is what I like to say. And that was my contribution to be like, this is not The Sopranos.
Awesome.
So, Brian, you said you weren't plugged into the comic book world, but we know that the Penguin takes place before the next Batman movie is going to come out. Certainly, there were some stories on set or things that you knew or things that they were aiming for. Anything you can share with us about what we're expecting out of this world without getting in trouble?
It was no spoilers. Like they kept that really close. I'm intuitive enough to know that yeah, I'm a believe what I want. Like there were moments where I was actually told like, okay, just forget about the Batman. Like this is a Max show because this was before HBO came and back into it. And I was like, well, I'm doing this because it has, I'm thinking of the Batman film. They're like, okay, just forget about the Batman right now. Like this is a Max show. And I'm like, okay, but in my head, I'm like, I don't believe that for a minute. So I'm just not going to say it, but everything I do, I'm thinking of the Batman. So yeah, no, it was kept very tight-lipped. Nobody ever discussed anything moving forward about where this was going. Back to the Zoe thing, the only thing I knew that, and it was actually stated that we can't do this because Zoe is doing this. And the two cannot match. We have to be two separate characters. Like if I wanted to give Sophia a pixie cut, a short pixie, it would not have been allowed simply because Zoe had that cut.
Hmm.
That was the only clue that I knew that somebody somewhere was considering both worlds. But it was not discussed on set. So it's easy for me just to not get in trouble because I have zero information. But I hope I can be a part of the Batman film going forward. I mean, I don't know how it works with filming in London, if they're filming in London, but I tried to put my best foot forward so I could like secure me a spot in the Batman film.
Well, if Below the Line has any influence, then
But what about the sense of doing like a sequel to this series? Was there a sense that this is like an unlimited series? There's so much in this world that you can spin out. But is there a sense that we go explicitly back to the Penguin, like a Penguin season 2? Or do you think it's just going to be spin outs and new characters? Or was there any sense of that on set? What might grow out of it?
Well, on paper for us, it was a limited series. I'm seeing little buzzes on social media that people are considering a second season and things like that, but I haven't heard any confirmation from my people or anybody that I know or trust. So I don't know if it's just rumor. But when we were filming, it was a limited series.
Now, Helen and Austin said that Colin was a real gentleman and a real trooper on this thing. But I've also read that he hated getting in that suit every day. And so I'm curious what your take was working with him, and whether he will get back into this suit other than like for a big movie.
It was a lot. He hated it, but not once have I seen Kyle. He'll say it like, this suit. But his energy was completely chill the entire time, all day. And I was one of the people that actually had banter with Colin. Like we had our kikis. So I feel like I would have got a really honest approach, energy from him. Because he would not have to put on for me at all. But he was totally, totally on board. In fact, I said to myself, I've never met an actor who can maintain that level of professionalism with what he went through from the morning, 3 hour pre-call. And, the special effects team, they kind of rock and roll with it. So in the morning, they're not playing jazz music, chilling. They're like hardcore music, every light on in the trailer, like energy is just through the roof. It took me a second to adapt because for hair, we're a little more zen, So when I came into, because I was the one who was helping put the hair together for like the first month or month and a half, but the pre-calls became too much for me. So we brought in a hair person specifically to take care of Oz somewhere around a month and a half into shooting. But Colin maintained his composure the entire time. It was very, very impressive.
That's awesome to hear. This is a totally random question that I don't know why this is occurring to me, but I just remember in that, I think it's the first episode when he's like naked in the chair, but his arms and stuff is so covered in hair. Is that all special effects team, or do you have some say in that as well?
No, that's all special effects. Anything from here down is special effects. And we're only in charge of that wig topper. Because, on the film, he shaved his head in like a halo form and they just glued a wig on top. But he didn't want to cut his own hair this time because it was such a long period filming. So we had to like gas squat his hair down to like a perfect ball cap shape, and special effects put a ball cap on, and then a lace topper, like a toupee, is put on top of that and blended around the sides. So that's how that worked for this particular one. But that was only responsibilities for hair as far as all the hair on Oz's body. But that hair is in that silicone is like, I think it's hand plugged by the wig maker, who is Diana Choi.
Oh my God.
I think Diana actually makes that. I know Mike Marino is involved he's like the guru for everything, but the wig maker is Diana Choi. She's incredible. She's a genius as well. Well, Mike's whole team is just like next level. I'm always impressed by their special effects team.
Brian, what other stories you want to share with us from set?
That's pretty much it for me. It's like I'm just really happy the show is a success, and the overall look from everything, cinematography. I just could not have predicted it to be this awesome of a show, and it was just a great experience. Filming was not easy, but everybody was super passionate about it, and to see the final product, it was a huge reward, and I'm just so grateful. I'm riding a wave right now. Trust me, it's been really fun.
Yeah, you guys deserve all the praise that you're getting though too. So definitely soak in the moment, because you guys nailed it.
I'm soaking it in. I'm trying my best to do everything. Like, next stop, the Emmys. Let's see if I want an Emmy. Okay.
Well, Brian, we want you to get an Emmy. We want to see more of this world. I think I speak for Gianni and me both on that. And Brian, we hope you get to be a part of it. If there is more of this, you please come back and talk to us about it. This was fun.
Love to. Thanks for having me.
On that note, we'll call it a wrap. Great having you here.
Nice meeting you guys.
Listeners, I always appreciate your feedback. You'll find my contact info on our website, below the line, oneword.biz. That's B-I-Z. You'll also find past episodes and links to all of our social media, so check it out. Brian, until you get that next Batman gig, where else can folks see your work?
I have a film coming out probably next year with Monkey Paw Productions. Jordan Peele produced. It's called Him, or it's called Goat, a goat. They're playing with the name, but it'll be coming out soon. So that's what's next for me.
We'll watch for that. Gianni, what are you plugging these days?
Oh, you know me, I'm always on podcasts somewhere. If it's not the Bad Movies podcast, old episodes, I do this like silly thing where I'm reading all of the Animorphs books now for the first time. And so if you want to hear about that, you could go to Morphin Buddies. That's also on all podcast services as far as I'm aware.
Well, this was a lot of fun, guys. Do plan on coming back. My closing credits, thanks to Curtis Five for our music, John Watt for our logo, and to all our listeners, I appreciate you. The Below the Line logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. And please rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks again from Below the Line.
I saw you say in
Hey, sorry, Gianni. Did I hear traffic? I don't know if that was from one of you or on my side. Did you guys hear traffic?
Oh, it was probably me, man. I'm sorry.
That's
Unfortunately,
okay. If it was you, that can edit that out easy. If it was Brian, I would have Brian restate it. But if it's on your side, that's perfect. I can fix that.
It could be me. I'm in Manhattan.
Oh yeah, you too. Yeah, yeah.
You guys are neighbors. Yeah, you guys are neighbors on this.